And like, I know I haven't quite reached the point of the book where it really starts making comparisons to like kind of the modern day in America and things like that.
Mm.
So I've got that still to look forward to. But I would actually say, kind of looking at like, obviously we've got lots of America and European tension in the news right now,
Yeah.
um, and it kind of brings to mind. I mean, this is again a bit of a side note, but um, we look at empire and we think, that's ancient history. That doesn't happen anymore, and it doesn't happen in the traditional sense. I don't think. Um, but one could make the argument that the USA is the closest thing that we could compare to an empire in the modern day, in
Yeah.
terms of
Yeah. Yeah.
influence, in terms of kind of the economy, in terms of
I
military, in
suppose
terms of
China is probably another. It's probably the other great kind of at the moment the other kind of great sort of neo-imperial power where it's sort of empire by another means. It's the Belt and Road initiatives. It's
soft
buying
power. It's
up
soft
kind
power,
of
really.
buy yeah soft power buying up influence and America obviously right now is very belligerent and is coming out from behind the sort of veil. But for a long time, the American neo-imperial experiment was similarly sort of, economically driven.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, we're entering a whole new phase now with the Venezuela stuff, but we won't get
Well, yeah.
bogged down
Well,
in
I
it
mean,
now.
the point that I was going to make was more in terms of kind of America and its relationship with Europe, post World War II, because you look at the way that obviously World War II played out in the way that it did, and America massively benefited from kind of like the fallout, right? Because they bankrolled the European allied countries. They provided military assistance. They obviously fought a lot. A lot of Americans fought in Europe, and helped win the war. But also, European countries took out massive loans from America to like rebuild their countries, like Britain did,
The Marshall Plan, yeah.
France did, other European countries did. And through that, America kind of then transitioned into soft power because they, obviously had the adversary in the Soviet Union, which was their kind of boogeyman. Well, not boogeyman necessarily, but I guess you could say their main adversary. Let's call it that. Who they were kind of vying for influence over Europe with, and it was in their interests to develop things like NATO to, really kind of stand alongside the Western European countries to kind of be that kind of barrier between the communist world and democratic world. But
Yeah.
as we're kind of seeing, obviously America did that by building loads of military bases. They stationed soldiers in European countries. All European economies are pretty much tied to America in some way, shape, or form in terms of business or whatever. But what we're seeing now is, I mean, maybe not a complete fracture of this relationship, but definitely a straining of it, where you have America telling Europe that they need to spend more money on defense, they need to build up their militaries more, they need to do their own thing now. Like we don't want to pay for your defense no more, and all these other things.
Yeah, yeah.
So the European response is, okay, fine, we'll build more stuff, but we're not going to buy your weapons anymore because we can't trust you. And then that's obviously then met with like, wait, hold on. You need to still buy our weapons. We're just not going to help you. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's like, well, you can't have your
It's
cake
quite,
and eat
yeah.
it. It's not how it works on the geopolitical stage. But what
Cake
I'm
is
trying to get at is that could we theoretically in our in this episode, given the theme and everything, could you maybe make a kind of comparison to Europe being the peripheral states to America in this situation, where over the best part of about 80 or so years, they benefit from the economic growth that America provided. They benefited from the military protection. They benefited from kind of technology sharing, knowledge sharing, all these other things. And now we've reached a point where like there's a forced. I mean, it's happening in a completely different way because it's not driven necessarily by the Europeans, completely separate of America. It's driven by Europeans because of America. And I don't think we've necessarily seen something happen in the same way. But could you make that comparison that now, because these peripheral states are having to be
Mm.
more self-sufficient and therefore become more independent and therefore become, an adversary to America at
Yeah,
some
and I
stage
think
down
and
the
I
line?
think not just to, I think economically there'd be a lot of work to do first before that was a reality. But also, I think you're right in the sense that it's not only America but it's also Russia, because obviously, Russia being more aggressive has made those Eastern European countries ramp up with defence
Like
and
Poland is a
really.
great example.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like Russia have created the adversary that they that they didn't want because they've been throwing their toys out the pram. So on both ends, there's that kind of squeeze on Europe. And as you say, maybe over a time, I mean, if we can get ourselves, I mean, I say we, obviously politically we're not in Europe now, but um, if
Well, by all intents and
Europeans,
purposes,
I mean,
we're still allied with Europe. So
militarily,
yeah,
we're
yeah.
still, NATO and all the rest of it. But there is perhaps if we could pull ourselves. I mean, we're a bit of an economic basket case at the moment, but if we could pull ourselves together, maybe there is scope in the next century to slowly develop, as you say, that the peripheral, take on a sort of, because of course we were once the big, the central power, and now we're, as you point out, we've receded into a peripheral role, but we could then perhaps build up again and become a real contender.
Well, I think
I
as
don't
well,
know.
this is definitely more of a topic for a Cold War episode, because I think the geopolitics of kind of the EU and Europe as a kind of tool of like American foreign policy, I think it's kind of interesting to delve into. But I do think that obviously Europe becoming more militarized and self-sufficient isn't really beneficial to either Russia or America. And I would
Yeah,
actually probably argue that a lot of American soft power over the last sort of 80 years has been directed at kind of making sure that, yeah, Europe is allied and is very closely integrated with America, but they're never able to kind of do it independent of the US.
yeah,
Because a strong, united, actually efficient Europe is arguably one of it could be a superpower if it all kind of came together in the right way. But obviously, as we know, with the way that bureaucracy and government bureaucracy and stuff is, nothing really happens very quickly or very efficiently. So,
well, quite. And also, I think to build on that, I think Europe's, I think we may be the last big block. I mean, if you include other Western powers like Australia and all the rest of it, we might be the last big sort of block that still puts store in liberal democracy. And liberal democracy is all well and good, but in an aggressive in a world that's changing, it probably I think it sort of kneecaps you in a way because you're trying to follow these sort of Enlightenment principles. You're not able to really take the gloves off in the same way that powers who have done away with liberal democracy, and America's rapidly proving itself to be one, can do. So it's I would think we'd have to see a more authoritative. I mean, it's quite possible with the rise of populism, the steady growth of populism, but the rise of a more authoritarian, kind of harder nosed Europe.
but
I mean,
I would also,
Poland are going that way, and Hungary and all the rest of it. But
yeah, I would also argue that to that point, I don't necessarily think that's fully necessary in the sense, like I'll explain it a little bit. Is that I think in the current situation that the world is in, where you have a more belligerent United States, you have obviously Russia being absolutely aggressive, albeit useless in Ukraine, still aggressive. There's obviously this kind of appetite in Europe to you have to be tougher, you have to do this, to do that. But surely isn't there an argument to say that for if Europe really wants to be that kind of bastion of liberal democracy and maintain the way of life that a lot of people enjoy in different European countries, is it not to say that, if Europe banded together, obviously we all have differences, and all different European countries have cultural differences and everything. But is that not something worth fighting for? Like, is that not something?
Yeah, for sure. And
I
think, yeah, and I think it's one of those things you're not going to know until sort of crunch time. But
we hope that doesn't come around. But
yeah, quite. We hope we don't get there. But I think, it's all well and good to sort of moan about, as maybe I'm liable to, the sort of decadent kind of state, to go back to decadence, the sort of decadent state of kind of European
bureaucratic ineptitude,
whereby we sort of, we thumb our noses at the idea of conscription, or we're too sort of clever and advanced for all that kind of silly stuff. And it's like, well, at some point that may be a necessity, and if we can do all that, and of course only necessity is the mother of invention. Of course we would, if it came to it, I'm sure we would change our tune. But I think some serious scare, and it's happening in Eastern Europe obviously, but some serious scare would have to come to us, particularly for us to go, oh, hang on a minute, we better start getting serious about these sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the fact that we're kind of integrated into NATO, and there's obviously most of Eastern Europe is in NATO already. So I think those threats are already kind of being looked at, and we're kind of preparing.
There's a sort of lag that the further west you go into Europe, because there's not an obvious military threat to Europe from America, although there's sort of noises off starting to happen with sort of Greenland, etc. There is that lag, so I think we being on the sort of most westernmost end of that are maybe the most complacent, but I think there's a sort of feeling that it's creeping, it's sort of seeping through Europe, this sense that we need to really start toughening up.
Well, it'd be interesting to maybe have a conversation on Poland at some point as well, because obviously Poland has been invaded quite a lot of times.
You're off to Lithuania soon, so you could tell me all about the Poland-Lithuania.
Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. That's going to be very fun to dive into.
I look forward to an episode on that from you.
Yeah, no, it'd be very fun. But yeah, I'm about to experience Baltic winter, and if I don't come back as an ice cube, then we can record more.
Yeah, I'll have to thaw you out first, but it's going to be Baltic, you could say.
It will be Baltic. And on that note, I think we'll call it a day there.
We should put this episode on ice, I think.
Yeah, I see what you did there. But yeah, I hope you've found this insightful and interesting. Most of all, I mean, I'm loving this book so far. I'll put it up on the screen. Maybe I'll put a link or something in the description as well. But yeah, it's been very fun discussing all this with you, Harley, and looking forward to the next one.
Oh, it's been enlightening as always, Jacob. Thank you so much.
Love to see it. All right, take care, everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode.